Owning a ranch in the country has always been my dream. Wide open pastures, a quiet house under the stars, and best of all, the lake I inherited from my grandfather. It's not huge, but it's deep, spring-fed, and perfect for fishing, swimming, or just sitting by with a fire. It's my slice of peace in a world full of noise. Unfortunately, a few years ago, a subdivision sprouted up nearby, complete with an HOA that seemed to believe the world revolved around them. At first, it was harmless occasional letters about how my fence didn't match community standards, I wasn't in their community, or how my cows were unsightly. I ignored them. But then came the night that started everything. It was late summer, and I decided to set up a small campsite at the lake. Nothing fancy, just my tent, a cooler, and a little fire pit my grandfather had built decades ago. I caught a few catfish, grilled them up, and settled back to watch the stars. Absolute peace. Until headlights bounced across the tree line. Out of nowhere, a couple of SUVs pulled up on the far side of the lake. Out climbed none other than the infamous HOA president, Karen, and a few of her board members. They marched right up to my fire like they owned the place. "What do you think you're doing?" she snapped. I raised an eyebrow. "Camping. On my property." "This is community property," she barked back. "You can't camp here. Fires are against HOA policy, and this is for subdivision residents only." That floored me. Subdivision residents? "Lady, this lake has been in my family for 3 generations. It's on my deed. You're the trespassers here." She folded her arms. "Don't lie. The HOA map clearly shows this is a neighborhood amenity. We've had events here for years." That made my blood run cold. "Events?" "Oh yes," another board member chimed in smugly. "Picnics, barbecues, even a 4th of July party last year. Families love it." I stared at them, realizing what had been happening. These people had been sneaking onto my ranch for years, acting like my lake was their private park. And now they were lecturing me for using it. I told them, as calmly as I could manage, to leave. Instead, Karen whipped out her phone and dialed 911. "Yes, hello? I'd like to report a man trespassing and lighting illegal fires in the HOA common area." I almost laughed, but I decided to let it play out. 15 minutes later, a county deputy pulled up. He stepped out, shining his flashlight across the lake, clearly bracing for a mess. Karen rushed over to him, pointing at me like I was an outlaw. "That's him. He's camping illegally. He's dangerous." The deputy walked over, took one look at my setup, then asked, "Sir, is this your property?" I pulled the folded deed out of my tackle box. Always keep a copy handy when you live next to a meddling HOA. He read it under his flashlight, nodded, then turned slowly toward the HOA crew. "Ma'am, this deed clearly shows the lake and surrounding land belongs to him. Not the HOA." Karen sputtered. "That's impossible. We've always used this lake. It's on our newsletter photos." The deputy raised an eyebrow. "And did you have permission from the owner?" Dead silence. Then I decided to twist the knife. "Deputy, since we're talking about trespassing, I'd like to file a complaint. They just admitted they've been hosting events here without my knowledge or consent. That's years of trespass." The deputy nodded slowly. "That's your right, sir." Then he turned back to the HOA board, his voice hardening. "Folks, you're lucky he isn't pressing charges tonight. I suggest you pack up and never step foot here again unless invited." You should have seen their faces. Karen looked like she'd bitten into a lemon. They left in a huff, muttering about legal action. But the story doesn't end there. The very next week, I put up signs around the property, private property. No trespassing. Trespassers will be prosecuted. I also installed a couple of trail cameras. Sure enough, a few days later, I caught photos of HOA families trying to picnic at the lake. I sent the pictures directly to the sheriff's office. Warnings turned into citations. The best part? Word spread fast. The HOA had to admit they'd been lying to residents for years, advertising my private lake as a community feature to lure in buyers. That little mistake cost them a lot of angry homeowners and more than one lawsuit. Now the only people who camp at my lake are me, my family, and a few friends. And every time I sit by the fire, watching the stars reflect in the water, I smile knowing the HOA has to drive past my private property signs and seethe. Because if there's one thing sweeter than fried catfish, it's watching a bunch of entitled busybodies get burned by their own lies.